What do you hate about SEO?
I'm going to go a bit contrarian here. I absolutely love SEO. Just hearing different perspectives from generalist SEO, a paid search person, and then an in-house SEO at a SaaS company, it widened my eyes, my view of how AI is and is not playing a role in the future of SEO. Streamline the basics. 2, orchestrate your team. 3, automate monotony, and 4, reposition your focus. I'm happy to go deeper into any of those. Recently, in the last 3 years or so, I've really started to expand my scope to focus on other things like Amazon SEO, TikTok SEO, and it's been a lot of fun, to be honest. I would say the largest opportunity there is making sure that processes are written down so then onboarding doesn't take up so much time and it's not so taxing. That's usually how people get burnt out or when in-house teams begin to fail.
In charge of SEO at your company? Check out Linkhouse. Tens of thousands of websites from more than 20 countries in one place, integrated with the most powerful SEO tools. Plus, expert support at no extra cost. Sign up for free at app.linkhouse.co and start saving your time today.
Hi everybody, we are back with I Hate SEO Podcast. And this is the second day of Brighton SEO conference. And I'm here with Travis Tallent from BrainLabs. Travis, welcome.
Hello, thank you. Very excited to be here. And our conversation's already been wonderful so far. I'm so excited to talk more about SEO.
Awesome. So I will start with big question. What do you hate about SEO? Since we are in the I Hate SEO podcast.
I'm going to go a bit contrarian here. I absolutely love SEO. And I think I view my job as helping people find the information they need, almost like an online librarian, if you will. And that's a very fulfilling career when you think about it, because when people are searching for shoes that help them feel better, run faster, and I get to be the one to point them in the right direction, that is a very, very cool thing. It is a black box at times and it is challenging, but to me, I think that is part of the fun. So even though I'm on the I Hate SEO podcast, I would say I fall squarely in the camp of I love SEO and it's been a wonderful career for me.
Awesome. I mean, it's love and hate relationship. We have that hard thing here, so you're included. I love that definition that you gave. Online librarian. That is so poetic. I absolutely love it. Yeah, this is really, really nice definition.
Yeah. There are. Now that I think about it, the one thing I hate about SEO is maybe like the bad reputation that, in my opinion, bad SEOs have earned in this way. And I think it's gotten better over the years and more, our practices have gotten more aligned to, really helping people find information. But there was a long time where, most SEOs in the space were just trying to game the system, and that gave this a bad reputation. But I think at its core, it's well intentioned and it's a valuable endeavor.
Yeah, the mindset of the community are changing.
Yes,
in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Travis?
Yeah, absolutely. So I live in the beautiful state of Colorado. Absolutely love living there. And I work remote for BrainLabs. I head up the SEO and CRO teams at BrainLabs. Globally, that team is about 90 people. And BrainLabs is a 1,000+ person full service digital marketing agency. We work with some of the biggest brands in the world, brands like Capital One, Adidas, Estee Lauder. And my job is really to ensure that the product vision for SEO and CRO is big and we can ultimately execute it. So aligning the resources that are available to us to help see through that big vision.
So how many times have you been to Brighton SEO conference?
This is my 5th time, but my first time speaking. And
cool.
yeah, it's been wonderful to experience the conference in both ways, pros and cons on both sides. But yeah, it's been a ton of fun to speak at this conference.
I heard from other interviewees that Brighton SEO is especially good when you want to break into the community as a speaker.
Yes. Yeah. I think part of that is there's so many stages. I forget how many, maybe 6, 7. Yeah. So many different opportunities, which in and of itself lends itself to more beginner speakers. And not only that, but you can pitch such a variety of topics. You aren't pigeonholed into, say, like strategic SEO or enterprise SEO. You can really niche down and say, I want to talk about the psychology of the search or something, and people will be interested and excited to hear that here. But yes, it is the world's largest SEO conference with, I think this year they'll have 7,000, 8,000 SEOs.
That's crazy.
Yeah, which is absolute insanity. But just the sheer size of it lends itself to be a great place for new speakers.
So what talk did you like most? What sparked your interest?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm going to be a little biased here, I really enjoyed the AI panel.
Oh, the AI panel.
which of course was a panel that I moderated, but just hearing different perspectives from a generalist SEO, a paid search person, and then an in-house SEO at a SaaS company. Hearing all of those different perspectives about a topic that I think I've been inundated with on my LinkedIn feeds, and really hearing from the people on the ground who are doing the work, it widened my eyes, my view of how AI is and is not playing a role in the future of SEO.
Yeah, that was a good panel.
Thank you.
And it's very nice to have those conversations between people. It's a different experience than just a talk.
Yeah. I like talks. I love giving a talk. Like
how was your talk?
It was amazing. Yeah. It was my partner's birthday. So I convinced the audience of, a few thousand to sing him happy birthday on his birthday,
so nice.
Which I was very nervous about because I was warned by my British colleagues that folks in the UK tend to be a bit more reserved. They may not want to join in on that, but it all worked out. Yeah. It was wonderful. And yeah, talks for me are really a great way to see how your ideas land, to really sharpen your ideas of how do you communicate a complex topic in very simple terms that a wide audience can ultimately understand. And all in all, I've gotten great feedback, and I think it went well.
Awesome. I unfortunately couldn't be there because I was interviewing.
No worries. Reasonable.
But could you give us a little summary of that talk?
Yeah, absolutely. So the talk was Soar with AI, how to grow your team in an AI world. And SOAR is an acronym. It stands for 4 things. 1, streamline the basics. 2, orchestrate your team. 3, automate monotony. And 4, reposition your focus. I'm happy to go deeper into any of those.
Yes. Can we go one by one?
Sure,
and you give us a little detail about each step?
Absolutely. Yeah. Awesome. So when we think about streamlining the basics, I always tell my team that nailing the basics is 80% of the job. And it's really important to have things nailed down, like reporting cadences. How often are you reporting? But also not only nailing down the reporting itself, but also what KPIs are you including in that? Okay. And the overarching theme for this section is AI is going to know more than you. Mm-hmm. It's going to be able to retain information, far more information than a human brain can. But the one thing it won't have over humans is care. Mm-hmm. And humans can care more than AI. So if you align your KPIs to what the stakeholders are ultimately interested in, then you will be able to show that you care more. So when you streamline the basics, also factor in how you can apply that level of care to really make your point land. Once you streamline the basics, you can move on to orchestrating your team. Mm-hmm. This is really about writing down that process, because there is no point in automating something or trying to test AI if you don't already have a shored up process to begin with. You're going to spend a lot of time just finicking with something. And most importantly, you won't be able to validate that output. Crystal mentioned this in the AI panel.
Yeah, if you have a mess, you're going to automate a mess.
Exactly.
And it's still going to be a mess.
So yeah, like it takes that human loop and that human input to really get the most out of whatever technology you're using, whether that's AI or even just simple tools.
Yeah, because even if you bring something like automation to a process, but the process is not efficient in the first place, like you're not going to get 100% of that automation.
Exactly.
So your ROI is so much better if you first just streamline the process.
Yes, exactly. So once you do those two things, then you can focus on automating monotony. Okay. And a lot of times when I talk to SEOs, they're interested in automating things that, in my opinion, like just aren't worth automating. Like it doesn't take that much time to rewrite one title tag, right? Okay. Just do that yourself. You don't need to use AI for that. But something that takes, say, hours, 50 hours per month or whatever, that can and should be automated. So identify what those opportunities are and then really build a script to get stakeholder buy-in to invest in that automation in some way. Whether that is automating reporting, I think reporting is a great thing to automate because your time is better spent analyzing the reports, not putting them together. Yes.
And AI is much better about the data analysis and just giving it a summary at scale.
At scale. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, it can just process information far faster than a human brain can. So doing those three things, streamlining the basics, orchestrating your team, automating monotony, then you are ready to reposition your focus. And I challenge every SEO person out there to be less of an SEO person and more of a business person. Okay. And when you are able to do steps 1 through 3, you can reposition your focus in a way to really focus on the business priorities, not just the SEO priorities. So you're no longer worried about one individual page. You're worried about how do we launch a whole new section or how do we successfully integrate new product launches into our approach. And that is how you are going to have an outsized impact on your business and your organization and really like up level your own career. That's how you get promoted. That's how you get raises. But it's also how you make your team look really good and go ask for additional resources so they can continue to invest in you and your team. Yeah,
exactly. The stakeholder buy-in. Yeah. That's often the problem.
Yes.
What's your strategy for that?
It's, I get asked this a lot. And I think a lot of people view stakeholder buy-in as like, there's only one path to doing it successfully. And the reality is it's all about relationships. And every relationship is going to require different nurturing and a different approach. So my broad piece of advice would be really focus on that relationship and like, how can you care more? And then my more nuanced advice is personalize your approach to that specific stakeholder. So then you learn what matters to them and then align your strategy to what matters to them.
That's a good point. People have different characters. They care about different things. This actually may just stem from the function they hold, right? CFO care about money, CMO about optimization. So you have to think about those roles as well.
Yeah. And like be okay with their defaults. Most COOs I've met, their default answer is always no. Like that's kind of their job. Like their job is to make sure that like status quo is good. We're going to have steady growth. And like the easiest path to that is to say no and avoid like huge bets, and avoid risk in the org. So when you start to kind of understand what angle they're coming from, that's how you can start to build that relationship and convince them otherwise.
Exactly. Yes. So coming back to your talk, so with AI, I wanted to talk about business first. What are the common mistakes people make when they try to grow an SEO team?
I think number one is growing too fast, like not having a really good pulse on your business metrics and profitability and numbers. The SEO industry can be a lot of boom and bust. Say you sign on one very large client that requires you to hire an individual team to service that particular client. That can be really, really risky on the agency side. So you always need a really good pulse on your numbers, and you always need to ask what needs to be true in order for us to hire that next person. And that is exactly what we've built or what I've built with my team at BrainLabs is like forecasting of when does it make sense to hire that next person. On the in-house side of things, I would say the largest opportunity there is making sure that processes are written down so then onboarding doesn't take up so much time and it's not so taxing. That's usually how people get burnt out, or when in-house teams begin to fail is they are unable to successfully onboard folks and retain folks. And that will eventually lead to burnout for the entire team and worse results for the organization as well.
And like the constant rotation.
Yeah. There's a fantastic stat that I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but it's some very large number that basically says if you don't nail the onboarding of a new employee, they are, 60, 70% more likely to leave within a year. And it's a very eye-popping number where it shows you the importance of making sure you have a very defined and streamlined onboarding process, regardless if you're an agency or in-house. And I think oftentimes SEO teams don't pay attention to the human element of it. Okay. They're really just focused on like doing the work, the execution, and the skill set required to do that. Yes. But at the end of the day, we're in a people business, and you really need to focus on the people as you grow and scale your team.
Yes, and I think it's pretty easy to convince the stakeholders that this is an important issue, since costs of hiring someone and the search and the constant rotation, these are huge.
Yeah,
they can go into like tens of thousands of dollars.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the other thing I'll say is a lot of times, especially in-house, you're not really going to get support from, say, a people operations or an HR team to build out an SEO training or an SEO onboarding.
Yes.
So I highly encourage you, if you are in that position as a leader, take that on yourself, put pen to paper, build that process and do it. It's worthwhile.
Yes, absolutely. Because then you can always show that your team is stable and you're growing and you're not generating costs.
Yes.
Awesome. So let's talk AI now.
Yeah.
What about common misuses of AI do you see?
Common uses or
misuses, because there's so much thought about AI nowadays, and everybody's trying something. So I was just thinking, how are people misusing it?
I mean, I'm going to plainly call out Google in some ways here. Like, a large language model in and of itself is not meant for information retrieval. It is meant for information generation. And when we think of something like a search engine, that is meant to be information retrieval. So to me, like using something like ChatGPT or Perplexity to try to find sources for information is not a good use case of AI as it stands today. I think another use case, funny enough, is a calculator. Again, LLM technology is about generating content, not about actually giving you accurate information. Yes. So there have been, we've tried to really test the bounds around data analysis. And what we found is it can analyze the data that you input really well. But if you start asking it to manipulate that data, like what would the number be if it grew by 20% or 30%, it struggles to do those calculations. If you ask it like, hey, don't or write me a title tag that's no longer than 60 characters, it'll populate a title tag that's actually 70 or 80 characters. So it struggles with just like very, very basic math.
Absolutely.
And that's a huge problem at the end of the day,
Yes. I totally agree. I tried it myself. I fed, that was, I think, either ChatGPT or Claude, some data and asked it to calculate, percentages. And it was like totally off.
Yeah.
And finally, I just called it like, are you really making this stuff up? And the GPT answers, I'm so sorry. As an AI, I shouldn't be doing that.
That's hilarious.
So, but you really have to be careful because the model will pretend that it knows what it's doing. And if you're not aware of these problems, you may run into some serious issues.
Yeah. I mean, if you blindly trust the information and the numbers that come out of it, you will be in hot water and you'll be relying on the wrong information to ultimately make your decision. So, it's to be honest, I don't know what the resolve for that is, other than like keep testing it and really, really be skeptical of the output and always validate the output.
Exactly. I think you just have to like keep in mind validation.
Yeah.
So what are good business uses of AI in general? Can you give us some practical examples?
Yeah, absolutely. I think AI is a hell of a poet. That was a line I said in my presentation yesterday. It's great for ideation. So when you're a great use case could be like scraping the site of all of your existing content, uploading that into a GPT, and then asking it what additional topics could I build related to the content that I've uploaded, right? Like there's your content calendar for the year.
That is awesome.
And it's a great way to ideate. Even briefing, using GPTs through the content creation, content brief creation process is a really great way to streamline that process. I would still not advise using it to actually write the content. What we've found is you spend the same amount of time, except you spend more time editing and validating the sources and doing all of that than you would just writing it to begin with. And at the end of the day, you end up with content that's super similar to whatever else is already out there and whatever the LLM has been trained on. So, you can fix some of that or tweak some of that with more niche prompts. But at the end of the day, is that really a time savings? And there's still this big question mark and risk around what does this mean for copyright? And most of the brands BrainLabs works with, they have very high brand safety guidelines. And so it's not something we use for any content generation itself today.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever tried building any AI agents?
Yeah. Yeah, I actually, in the early days, I built a presentation AI agent where you would upload so it was trained on Harvard Business Review's presentation guidelines and tips and tricks.
Awesome.
And you could upload a deck with the script and say like, hey, what are some ways I can make this better? And it would give you feedback. You could interact with it. That was really useful. Unfortunately, it got shut down because OpenAI tightened their policy around what can be used to train the agents. And for some reason, I couldn't use Harvard Business Review's content to help train it. Yeah.
Oh, no.
But I'm sure they could. I'm sure it's in their database. But as a person, I could not use that. But I think there's definitely a world where those become quite powerful. And the other big part of my talk yesterday was AI is not just a tool. I think a lot of people talk about it like a tool, like a calculator. The reality is AI is an agent, and it's going to sit and be used in an organization in a very different way as an agent than a tool. It's going to sit in your team hierarchy. It's going to be the intern that gets, maybe 60% of stuff right, but you still have to train and you still have to coach and mentor. And our job as we enter into this world of AI is to stay above AI in our organization's hierarchy and make sure that we're leveraging it in really smart and unique ways that apply the human loop and that human ingenuity to it.
Yeah, but this is so true. You can't treat it as a tool. You have to treat it as an intern, as a junior staff member, because oftentimes I feel people expect like miracles out of it. Like just say, oh, write me a good LinkedIn post. And they expect it's going to generate a beautiful answer. But if you were to come to an intern and say the same thing, you wouldn't expect an amazing post, right? So you have to train it the same way. Then you really get the results. It's all about the guidelines and a good prompt.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think if you build a good agent trained on particular data, you can get really good results. I was wondering if this Harvard Business Review, if you could have you tried summarizing in some way to go around that?
Oh, maybe. Yeah. Once I shut it down, I didn't care much to try to stand it back up. But I think that's a really smart thing to test. Like, can you summarize that document and then use the summary to help train it? Yeah, I think that's smart. I think it's also like, I've presented at plenty of conferences and give presentations all the time to clients. I could just create my own guide.
Exactly. You know how to do it. You can spit out wonderful guidelines for the AI to do it and create agent that is Travis Tallent. Travis Tallent presentation guide.
Yes. But I was, at the time I was lazy and I wanted to use Harvard's.
Yeah, I actually did a similar thing where there is this book, Writing for Busy Readers, by Todd Rogers. And I actually thought it's great advice. And I created like a little agent based on the guidelines from the book, where I just can enter the text and it will change it according to the guidelines. So it's still my writing, but pared down according to, transformed according to those good guidelines, and saves so much time.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, so I think that's the success I had with, instead of like dealing with the authorship and the rights.
Yeah, that's really smart. And as you were saying that, I was thinking like, why aren't more people selling rights and access to an agent that they build. I think there's definitely going to be a future marketplace for that.
Yeah, I've seen actually some from HubSpot. HubSpot, Kieran Flanagan and Dharmesh from HubSpot. I think they built some agents that let you transfer, that when you load in video, it creates a series of social media posts.
Ooh, very cool.
That is,
Are they selling it, or are they just using it as like as a marketing tool?
They just released it, and they will be selling it, I think.
Yes. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. I think I don't know exactly the what selling model it is. If it's like a SaaS or a one-time fee. But I think it's available now to test.
Wow. Fascinating.
Yeah, so there are so many crazy uses. Yeah. So tell me, what is the weirdest thing you used AI for and it paid off?
Yeah, I think when I first read this question, my mind went many places. But the weirdest thing when I first heard it from the team, I thought they were nuts, was how can we use AI to generate image alt text? So there are different AI models who can like look at an image and describe the image.
Okay.
And we wanted to blend that in the case of like, okay, review this image, describe it, and then optimize it for image alt text and do that at scale for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of images. And that use case sounded absolutely bonkers to me because it was like multiple steps of that process. And, that's one of the biggest limitations of AI right now is like it can't move on to that next step without intervention of some sort. And that paid off. Like we were able to launch a prototype of that, and it was pretty darn good. Like it was, it wasn't the most optimized image alt text, but it was definitely meaningful enough to describe exactly what was in the image and then serve its purpose on the site.
That is so smart. That is a really cool idea. And I am also very surprised that it worked because when you try to go the other way, create an image with an eye, like it doesn't understand. Like when you're trying to say, oh, change this color to this one, it's just like, what are you talking about?
Yes.
So that you had success with this is great. Like I'm truly amazed. And this is very smart. I personally don't like writing alt text.
I know, it's like one of the worst parts of SEO.
Exactly. That's what I hate in SEO, alt text.
It absolutely is one of the worst parts, but it's really important, right?
Exactly.
Like for
it's crucial.
For people who can't see or are seeing impaired, like that's how they experience your brand, your website. And it's really important to show up for that audience in that way.
Yeah. And you also can position quite well in the image search.
Yes.
With both alt text. So that's the practice that you shouldn't skip, but it's often like just tiresome.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the shows? Have you ever seen the show Silicon Valley? It's a comedy on HBO Max.
I haven't.
It's absolutely hilarious. Highly recommend.
Okay,
but there's one episode where they create an what's supposed to be like an image detection app. But it just does a pass fail of, is it a hot dog or is it not a hot dog? So you'll take a photo of like a fridge, it'll be like, not a hot dog. And I'm like very much reminded of that whenever when I think of how you can use AI to now describe images. Not a hot dog.
Yes, absolutely. So since we're talking about AI, what's your take on generative search? Should Google be afraid?
Look, Google has more market share than most other brands do in any other industry. Like I'm not someone who thinks Google is going to just disappear overnight.
Yes.
I think there is a world where audiences become a little bit more segmented for their search. But we've already seen that. Like people started going to Amazon for e-commerce searches. People are starting to use TikTok for restaurant searches. And I think with generative AI search, we're just going to see further segmentation of AI search is really great for like conversational how-to things, like how do I hang up this door? But it's not going to be, I don't think AI search will ever be great for information retrieval. I think that is what Google has more than anything else, is like it is a library, and we are able to use Google to help find the sources, the books, the information that we ultimately need in order to do whatever we're trying to achieve. So I see a world where it becomes more segmented, but I think it just means more technology and more searches in general. I don't think it means less market share for Google.
Yes, but it's probably still worth for us to get into generative search results, right?
Absolutely. Like, one of the most well-known stats in marketing is someone usually doesn't purchase from your brand until they've seen you. I think it's like 6 or 7 times. So showing up on all of these different mediums, SEO, paid search, paid social, programmatic, like that has its benefits. And I absolutely think optimizing for AI search will eventually become increasingly important. I will say today, I think a lot of SEOs are over-indexing into that. Like AI search today is a very, very, very small fraction of total searches. And I think the bigger threats are Amazon, TikTok, YouTube.
That's a good point.
Focus more of your energy on those where the audience already is. But I think in 5 years' time, there will be some segmentation leaning into whatever AI search tools exist by then.
Yes. So at this point, it's just like another touch point for the customer.
Yes, exactly. And, I kind of think that's how it'll always be.
Okay.
I don't think there's a world where everything gets consolidated into like one platform or anything like that. And I think those touch points are going to always be important. It's like going back to marketing basics almost.
Yes. So the market is just getting more fragmented.
Yes.
That's difficult because as an SEO, you have another channel to take care of.
Yeah. It reminds me of the early days of SEO. Like in the beginning, there was AltaVista, there was Ask Jeeves, Yahoo, Google, and then everything pretty quickly in the early to mid 2000s, it was like everything under Google. And my entire SEO career has been focused on Google and its properties. So like Google business profiles, YouTube, and recently in the last 3 years or so, I've really started to expand my scope to focus on other things like Amazon SEO, TikTok SEO. And it's been a lot of fun, to be honest, because it challenges you to think more strategically like a marketer, like going back to marketing basics and not just being a nerdy SEO focused on like coding and content and any of that kind of stuff.
Yes. So I was wondering, I was thinking in terms of like B2B versus B2C marketing. What are the good channels for B2B to focus on?
I mean, LinkedIn is a wonderful channel for B2B. In fact, we've driven millions of dollars in SEO revenue alone just from my own LinkedIn presence. It's worth investing time there, and it's worth really nurturing that audience and building those relationships. I think another really great channel on B2B is SEO. and is content marketing in many ways, because a lot of times in B2B, people don't totally know what they need, and you're trying to sell a software or a service that is a solution to a problem that people may not know like how to exactly search for that. So a holistic content marketing approach is a really great way to do that. On the B2C side, I think truthfully it's a lot more complex. And you have a bunch of different commerce channels. You have Google Shopping, you have Amazon, you have TikTok Shop, you have TikTok itself, you have Meta, and each of those are going to have different audiences. Say on Meta or like Facebook, you may have an older audience, but on TikTok, you may have a younger audience. And so going back to like SEO segmentation, I think we're going to see that as well. Like younger people are going to be using, say, Perplexity or ChatGPT. Older folks, like my parents or grandparents, they're going to use Google forever, like for the rest of their lives. So having that view on segmentation is crucial.
How do you get into generative search results?
There's still a lot of testing to be done here, but at least in the case of AI overviews, it's as simple as doing good normal SEO. What we've seen in the latest iteration of AI overviews, SEO Clarity put out a great report on this, is if you show up within the page 1 rankings, you are likely going to be sourced in the AI overview. And I think there's some element that ChatGPT, Perplexity, these other AI search engines will need to learn from Google on how do they become more information retrieval and less information generation. Today, when I use Search GPT and I say, what is the best blue backpack? It'll show me images of black backpacks and white backpacks, and there was literally not one blue backpack on there. So the fact that it can't understand simple qualifiers in a search, I think really shows the limitation of this technology. And until that is like the only way for that to improve is for them to change the way it works to become more RAG, retrieval augmented generation. There we go. Right. So all that to say, like, to show up in those search engines, in AI search engines, it's going to be based on website content. And the more content you have, the more context you are able to provide, the better crawlability you give to these AI search engines, the more likely you are to ultimately show up within them.
And do you think authority and like the links profile also is important here? Does it play a role?
I have not seen any information on that for AI search engines, but I would be surprised if there wasn't some element of at least brand authority that is getting pulled in. But to your point, like brand authority and link authority go hand in hand in many ways, but I think AI search engines are still trying to figure out exactly how that ultimately works.
Yes. I was thinking also, we talked about hallucinations, AI hallucinations before, that you have to be careful. Is there any way you can protect your brand from those? Like, do you have any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's using it in conjunction with other technology. So an example, at BrainLabs, we've built technology that can scrape a piece of content and then compare that content to a pass-fail checklist on, say, brand guidelines or SEO guidelines. So say you use generative AI and it uses wrong grammar, doesn't follow your brand guidelines, you can throw it through another QA checker to basically say, did this pass or fail? And then that zeroes in your focus on, cool, how do I edit this more? But I've tried to just rely on the AI, and it'll fail. Like if you say like, hey, like you need to follow the brand guidelines, you re-upload the brand guidelines, it'll do it again, and it might still not capture everything. It might, use lowercase in cases you want uppercase or whatever. So it's, I don't think it's quite there yet to totally rely on like all of the inputs that you give it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And one last question, with this rise of AI and how it speeds up all the content generation, marketing, everything moves faster, and I feel the user is flooded with the wealth of information and the details, and all the campaigns move faster. The saturation is faster. The trends are changing faster, but the user's attention goes down. That's the deficient good nowadays. How can we fight for the user's attention? Any thoughts of that?
The user what?
Attention.
Oh, attention.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Because it's on the, with this flood of information, that's the deficient good, right?
Tying this to brand, I think this is really where the brand comes in, and look, I will say I am lucky enough to work with brands that everyone knows. So there's a lot of privilege in that.
Yeah.
I think it's much more difficult for a brand just getting started. But even a brand just getting started, like focus on that brand. Because when someone says Lego, or when someone says Adidas, or when someone says Capital One, they know exactly what that means, what that company does, what they don't do. And that has a lot of power when a user is being inundated with information. It's like going to the grocery store and seeing 40 different options of ketchup and choosing Heinz.
Yeah, because you know it.
You know it's good, it's reliable. It might be a little more expensive, but it's good.
Yeah.
So you use it.
And familiar with it.
Right. And when there's chaos, and I think we're going to see a lot of chaos in the marketing world, people default to what they know, what they trust, and
that's safe.
Yes, exactly.
So any good tips for brands that are just starting out?
Get out there. I think a lot of brands over rely on one, maybe two marketing channels. And look, I get it. Like there's finite resources, there's finite time. At the end of the day, though, like investing in that upfront and over investing in marketing and brand, even more so than like business operations or product development, it's probably worthwhile in the end. Of course, there's a balance. But if I was starting a business, even like a local business today, that's where I would spend most of my time and attention is like, how do I get out in the community? I'm sending mailers to people. How do I sponsor some sports league or something like that to let people know like I'm out here in the community and I can start to get my name out there in a bigger way.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Travis. I feel like I could talk to you for hours.
Same, yeah. Great conversation.
So interesting and so many great insights. So if our viewers, if you are hungry for more, follow Travis on LinkedIn, follow our profile, Linkhouse, to find out when the new episodes are coming out. And we will be there with more great information. Just as the last one thing. Tell us, where can we find you tonight?
Yeah, I will. Greg was telling me about Bar Broadway. That sounds fun. Where they sing show tunes. That sounds like a place I want to be because I love musicals. So
awesome. So I hope you're gonna enjoy your evening.
Yes.
And I hope we can talk soon again.
Thank you. Happy Brighton. So happy to see you here.
Yes, same here. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.